pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. Now, let's get ready, because I've talked about this franchise before a few times in this series alone, because I really wish I could have had the chance to talk about them at the time they both came out, but it just so happens that, well, there's a 7th film in the Tremors series, and it came out not even a year ago. So without further ado, I've already talked about Tremors 5, Bloodlines, and Tremors 6, A Cold Day. But now, let's get on to Tremors 7, Shrieker Island. The 7th film in the Tremors series, and well, believe it or not, the final film in the Tremors series. Yeah, we finally got an ending to the whole entire thing. I suppose they had to come up with something in order to end the franchise for good, but also not to leave it on a high note or a cliffhanger that would give us some potential exploration to find out what new sequels could be awaiting us, and perpetually how the series could potentially become even worse than it already has been. So you know what? This is a pretty big treat for me, because I've had the chance to watch this film already, and now a lot of details are still fresh in my mind. So let's go ahead and talk about all of this. Tremors 7, well, just like you think it is, it takes place on an island. An obvious notch right there based on the setting, but you know what? It works pretty much. Oh, man. Wow. Batteries are running out all over the place. Well, anyways, quite a bit of time has passed already, so let's just continue on with this. Anyways, Shrieker Island basically gives us a whole new perspective on the whole series. A new perspective finally comes up here. A whole new twist in the plotline. After all these years, I tell you, I mean, there's really a lot of things out there, a lot of questions that I feel like might need some answers here, but, well, for the time being, let's just focus on the plotline of Tremors Shrieker Island, right? So anyways, you probably are going to be wondering, if you ever go ahead and watch this film right now even, what on earth happened to Burt Gummer? Because unlike many of the other films where Burt Gummer comes in a sort of stylish intro phase, a sequence of some sorts that probably won't be forgotten, a cliche that seems to take place in a lot of films where there's a lot of prideful, heroic intent in the main character as they first appear on screen in these films. Well, in this instance, we don't get Burt Gummer, pretty much. All we get are people traveling to islands to meet up with some other people, pretty much. But believe it or not, Burt Gummer actually is in there somewhere. And if you haven't found out already, then well, I'll make it clear for you. When I saw this film, even I had no idea where Michael Gross's character supposedly was throughout the entire film up until maybe the 15-minute mark. It turns out that Gummer was pretty much incognito as an island native, pretty much, with long hair and a gigantic beard. I mean, it's almost very peculiar to that of most other people whom seem to be homeless, adapted to the wild, and all that good stuff. Pretty much reminds me a lot with Kong Skull Island or Castaway, or many of these other films out there that center on how long people's hair grow over time because of how much time they've spent in these certain areas of the world. Well, anyways, it appears that Gummer is finally actually trying to get away from all this nonsense revolving around the graboids and the blastoids and all other things relating to all the creatures we've come to know about since day one. Yeah, it almost makes sense here. Gummer wants to avoid any further conflict with other people, but more importantly, Gummer does not want to have any other sort of affiliation with studies of the graboids and whatnot. But it turns out that's exactly what these people need. They need Gummer's help one last time. So it goes to a point where, well, it pretty much begins yet again. One final journey happens to take place. Gummer basically gets the right kind of hairstyle and mustache situated, and then helps set off on an expedition to investigate more graboid-related mishaps and disasters that were underway. And I tell you, a lot of the action that takes place here almost seems pretty relatable to that of most other films that have been going on at the time. A lot of films that are centered on jungle exploration and tomb raiding and all that good stuff. It's very much that same old cliche where people are around in a jungle carrying things like machetes and guns. Much like in Tomb Raider, Uncharted, or Indiana Jones even. Except here, I feel like it takes it on a whole new perspective. A more modernized variant of how life itself seems to progress. But in a way, it does show us that even after decades and decades and decades, we could still have these same old environments being used in these kind of films. But yet, that's probably still not enough to really convince me that this can be as good as any of the others that I've mentioned or otherwise. Well, anyways, Shrieker Island really does dig down very deep here. Being the final film of the series, I suppose that the creators really did have to do a whole lot just to ensure that they wanted to continue things going on here, while eventually getting around to a point where they had to end the whole entire series altogether. But here's the big thing about it. The ending is probably one of the most surprising aspects of the entire film and maybe of the entire series so far. The whole thing is just action, explosions and all that good stuff, bloody gore and all that. But I suppose that the almighty best part that I might have come to terms with and I've seen thus far might just be the death of Burt Gummer. Yeah, no joke. The gang ends up setting a bomb underground in order to get rid of probably the biggest graboid they've come across. One that is very much bent on destroying life before their very eyes. And, well, it turns out that in the process, Gummer basically lures the graboid over to the bomb. And then, well, just before it explodes, this guy dives down to the ground where the graboid eventually comes up from, while giving the middle finger. Man, right there. Who would have thought that such a moment like that would ever show up on screen? Yet, it's way too common nowadays to see just that take place. So, I don't even know anymore. I don't even know how I can look at the whole world the same as I used to. It's quite an affair. From day one, 30 years ago, all the way over to last fall. 7 films across a 3-decade-long time span. Quite a huge adventure. And yet, it seems to end on quite a high note. Gummer dies while killing off quite possibly the most powerful of all graboids thus far. A sacrifice ended up being made just so the preservation of humanity could be achieved once and for all. And the graboid army would pretty much go down in flames, torn asunder. But hey, you know what? Being the 7th film in the series, the last film in the series, we will never have to worry about that stuff ever again. So, the bottom line, it's over now. Shrieker Island closes off the entire story, and now I don't have to talk about nothing else about it. So, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and move on to the scoring thing. Right then and there, I pretty much had this thing pre-planned, and I could say 6.4 out of 10 is the only logical way that I can pretty much score on something like this. The way that it somehow revives these old, torn down cliches and rebuilds them up to a new magnitude, and not to mention a lot of gags and a lot of references. And who would have thought the death of the main character would take place here in the final battle of the final segment of this film? Well, give it a shot for yourself. I've seen it on Netflix, just like I did with the other two. Tremors 5 and 6, they both did alright in a way, but Tremors 7 probably is one that would be considered so bad it's good. Too good to ignore. So 6.4 is what you're going to get based on my analysis of the whole thing. And, well, like I said, it's over now. We don't have to talk jack about any of this any longer. So if you want to see more, go down to my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.